Sparta did not rise through wealth or culture, but through absolute discipline forged in fear of collapse. Surrounded by enemies and rebellion, Spartan society shaped itself around survival above all else. Unlike other Greek cities, Sparta rejected art, debate, and excess in favor of rigid control. Every institution existed to serve one purpose: maintaining military dominance over a hostile population. From birth, Spartan citizens were evaluated not as individuals, but as potential instruments of the state. Weakness was feared as a threat to collective survival, and strength became a civic obligation. Order was not encouraged in Sparta. It was enforced through tradition, law, and relentless conditioning. Spartan identity was constructed around obedience, endurance, and unquestioning loyalty to authority. The state believed freedom was dangerous unless tightly controlled by discipline and shared sacrifice. Individual ambition was suppressed to prevent any challenge to the fragile balance of power. Sparta's system prioritized stability over innovation, creating a society resistant to internal change. This resistance allowed Sparta to endure for centuries, but at a cost rarely acknowledged. Citizens existed to serve the state, while the state existed to prevent chaos at any price. Fear of revolt shaped policy, law, and military training across every generation. Sparta's rigid structure promised security, but demanded total submission in return. To understand Sparta, one must understand its obsession with control over every aspect of life. What emerged was not a free society, but one engineered to survive through constant vigilance. This vigilance defined Spartan power and ultimately limited its ability to adapt. Sparta's story begins, not with glory, but with fear turned into doctrine. That doctrine would shape one of history's most extreme experiments in social control. Spartan society was engineered for war, with every institution designed to produce disciplined and obedient soldiers. From birth, Spartan citizens were evaluated for strength, reinforcing the belief that weakness endangered the state. At age 7, boys entered the Agoge, a brutal training system that prioritized endurance, loyalty, and absolute obedience. Education focused less on knowledge and more on survival, conditioning children to accept hardship without complaint. Hunger, cold, and pain were deliberate tools used to strip individuality and strengthen collective identity. Discipline was enforced through constant competition, ensuring Spartans measured worth by resilience and conformity. Personal ambition was discouraged, as success was defined by service to Sparta rather than individual achievement. Even family bonds were secondary to state loyalty, reshaping emotional ties around collective survival. Military readiness became a lifelong obligation, extending Spartan identity beyond childhood into adulthood. Citizens lived under constant scrutiny, knowing honor and shame were powerful mechanisms of social control. Equality among Spartan warriors was enforced to reduce envy and maintain unity within the ruling class. Luxury was rejected, as comfort was believed to weaken resolve and invite moral decay. Speech itself was regulated, favoring brevity to reinforce discipline and suppress unnecessary expression. Public rituals reinforced obedience, reminding citizens that Sparta's survival outweighed personal desire. Fear of dishonor became as effective as punishment, shaping behavior through internalized control. This system produced formidable soldiers, but required relentless sacrifice from every citizen. Sparta's stability depended on maintaining this rigid structure without deviation or compassion. Any challenge to tradition was treated as a threat to the survival of the entire state. Through control, discipline, and fear, Sparta sustained power far beyond its population size. Yet, this perfection in order carried hidden costs beneath its legendary military strength. Spartan dominance relied heavily on the labor of helots, an enslaved population forced to sustain the warrior class. Helots outnumbered Spartans dramatically, creating constant fear of rebellion beneath the surface of order. To maintain control, Spartans normalized violence, using terror as a preventative tool against uprising. Young warriors were encouraged to kill helots secretly, conditioning brutality as civic duty. This system trained soldiers while reinforcing psychological dominance over the oppressed population. Sparta's military culture depended on permanent internal repression rather than external conquest alone. Fear became institutionalized, shaping both the rulers and the ruled within rigid social boundaries. While citizens trained for war, helots produced food, enabling full-time militarization. Any sign of helot resistance was met with swift and overwhelming punishment. This imbalance forced Sparta to prioritize control at home over expansion abroad. Foreign campaigns were carefully limited, as absence risked internal collapse. Sparta's rigidity ensured stability, but eliminated flexibility in times of change. Economic innovation was discouraged, as stability mattered more than growth. Trade and wealth accumulation were restricted to prevent inequality among warriors. Over time, population decline weakened the citizen class without altering the system. Losses in war became harder to replace under strict citizenship rules. Sparta struggled to adapt as rivals evolved more flexible military strategies. Order preserved Sparta's power, but slowly eroded its long-term resilience. What once ensured survival gradually became a structural weakness. Sparta's legacy endures as a warning about the cost of absolute control. Sparta's political system limited change, relying on tradition rather than reform to preserve authority. Power rested with elders and kings, whose primary role was to maintain military discipline. Popular assemblies existed, but offered little challenge to entrenched elite control. Decision-making favored caution, slowing responses to shifting regional threats. As Greek warfare evolved, Sparta resisted innovation that conflicted with its identity. Naval power and siege warfare exposed weaknesses in Sparta's land-focused doctrine. Alliances became necessary, reducing Sparta's independence and strategic certainty. Victories masked deeper decline as manpower shortages intensified across generations. Strict social rules prevented integration of outsiders who might replenish the citizen class. Economic strain grew as helot labor systems faced increasing instability. Repeated revolts forced constant vigilance, draining resources and attention. Sparta could suppress dissent, but could not reverse demographic collapse. Rivals adapted faster, using flexible tactics and broader recruitment. What once ensured dominance became an obstacle to survival in a changing world. Sparta's fall was gradual, shaped by rigidity rather than sudden defeat. Its story reveals how control without adaptation eventually consumes itself. Sparta's legacy endures as a warning that discipline alone cannot preserve power without flexibility. Systems built to resist change may survive centuries, yet struggle when the world transforms around them. Control can create strength, but only adaptation allows that strength to endure across generations. Sparta chose order over evolution and paid the price when history moved beyond its limits. Its rise and decline remind us that stability without reform carries hidden costs over time. Sparta maintained order through rigid tradition, but its refusal to adapt slowly weakened its resilience. External pressures exposed internal limits, as discipline alone could not replace innovation or flexibility. The system that forged unity also restricted growth, locking Sparta into patterns it could not escape. Over time, rivals evolved faster, exploiting weaknesses hidden beneath Sparta's disciplined surface. Sparta's legacy endures as a warning that endurance requires reform, not just unwavering control. If you enjoy exploring history beyond the myths, consider subscribing for more documentaries like this. And as always, thank you for watching.